Hello, everyone. Very warm welcome to this session today, all about resident engagement and how to get the most out of resident behaviours and thinking about things like participation, contamination, capture rates, and how behaviour change as a science can help us. Absolutely delighted to be joined by Andrea Cornwell from Bexley Council. And we've actually been working with Bexley Council. We were just discussing it, Andrea and I, since September 2011. So that's quite a stint of intervention within the for Bexley residents. We run a scheme for them which encourages people to reduce their waste and to recycle more. And that's what we do as a company. That's what Team Jump are all about. We're all about motivating and empowering people to do more around sustainability and around waste and recycling as well. So today in the room, we've also got yourselves. We've got hopefully waste managers, sustainability managers working for local authorities, and that's what we're gearing this presentation all about. It's all about the work that we do with local authorities, and that work is really a bit of a mix. So we've got programs like we do with Bexley Council, which is about waste minimisation and recycling. We've also got quite specific initiatives which look at very specific behaviours. For example, for Hampshire County Council, we run a food waste challenge scheme, which is very, very much targeted at food waste. For other local authorities like Warwickshire County Council, we run a programme which is very much looking at waste minimisation behaviours. It's called Slim Your Bin, and that's very specific, looking at a tranche of behaviours to help residents tackle waste higher up that waste hierarchy. And then finally, we've got schemes which are more broader. Waste and recycling is included in those schemes, but it also looks at things like biodiversity, it looks at climate change, it looks at net zero targets, it looks at travel. And we run programmes for Nottinghamshire County Council and Derby County Council around those. So a really broad mix of behaviours, right? It's not just for us, it's not just waste and recycling, it's really broad. And I've got some data today from our from residents who have filled in a survey that we got them to complete last year. We had over 2,000 people fill in the survey, really fantastic result. And some of the data we'll be sharing is about that. And it is very much about those broad behaviours, although where we can, we're looking very specifically today at waste and recycling. But before we start, I just wanted to start with, well, hang on, I just look at this data very quickly. So we know that it's not just our own data which is influencing the approach that we take around resident engagement. We're also aware of all the other reams of data out there, and I think it's important to refresh our memory about what that is. So we know from the RAP report last year that when they were surveying residents, that only 9% of UK citizens feeling very confident about what they can recycle. DEFRA data showing that people are very aware of the impact of plastics on the environment, 78%, but we also know that the capture rates for plastics are nowhere near that high. So there's a gap there, right? And this gap, I think, which we're seeing here is this awareness over knowledge. Residents are concerned about what they can and can't recycle, but they don't necessarily have the knowledge to know and be confident about what they can recycle. And that's also reflected via kind of other research that's out there in the sector, concerns about microplastics, this figure that 12% of people thinking that plastics going to landfill is the greatest problem. We all know that landfill isn't no longer the top endpoint for lots of waste at the moment. So it shows that there's a gap there in knowledge, right? It shows that the reality of what's happening on the ground isn't catching up yet with residents' knowledge and awareness. So we could do a quick poll, and it's just really thinking about you and the work that you're doing within your local authority and whether you are using behaviour change techniques as part of your waste minimisation strategy. And it helps give me an idea of what's happening in the room and how to pitch some of the data we've got. So there should be a little pop up on your screen. It's a yes or no. If you can fill that in, that'd be great, and we'll start to see the results trickling in. And of course, behaviour change techniques, as a term, it can be all sorts of manner of different things. It could be things like prompts at the point of using a service. It could be the idea of pushing a social norm. It could be incentives, could be pledges, feedback loops, or really powerful one is making the right choice the easiest choice. So great, a good response, and it's great to see yes being the predominant one, that most people are using behavior change techniques within their role, because we know that using those behavior change techniques is a real shortcut to getting people to take action around waste, but also around broader behaviors as well. That's great to see, but also interesting to see that there's a few of us in the room who are not using these techniques yet, and I'm hoping to explore a few of those today, hopefully to bring them to life for you. Right, so we'll have a look at some data. So as I say, we asked this question, and this is very much looking at what the residents within our schemes are responding to. So we asked a very broad question around climate change. Do you think enough people are taking action to prevent and slow down climate change? And overwhelmingly, 73% members believe that not enough people are taking action to prevent climate change. So it's only the minority who think that enough is happening. And again, I think that speaks to that knowledge action gap. I think that I think when we're thinking about it from being waste professionals and thinking about how to influence waste, I think there's a few things here that we can tap into. One is this idea of collective action messaging. So if we've got a majority of people thinking that not enough is happening, we need to change their mind, right? Because we want them to feel like there's a social norm around doing the waste minimization, the waste behaviors which we want them to do. So messages like we're doing this together, or here's what to do next, I think will resonate and help shift the needle on some of these conversations. Interestingly, when we compare this data with the average across all of the schemes, and we run schemes not just for councils, but for universities, for hospitals, for private businesses, the average amongst residents was actually slightly less. So they're perhaps a little bit more pessimistic than our broader, more general audience. I thought that was interesting. The next data is looking at barriers. So these are what's stopping people from getting involved, right? So we know that there's a whole range of different barriers that's stopping people from waste minimization behaviors, from recycling behaviors, and we're asking people what the biggest barriers there were to them to taking action. And it's priorities, which competing priorities specifically, which came out as the top of this survey. We know that residents are busy, worried about 101 other things above and beyond their waste and recycling regime, and I think that's reflected here, isn't it? Very interestingly, it's knowledge came second, time, which I think links in very much with priorities, was third. And again, that knowledge, I think, is something we've seen that come out twice now, haven't we? It's something which education, I think, is a real, I think from the data we're seeing today, is a real missing piece of that puzzle. So yeah, competing priorities being the biggest barrier that people are perceiving they have in order to engage with these sort of behaviors that we want them to do. If we now look at motivators, so we think about motivation from an intrinsic perspective, so that's your own motivations and what drives you, and your extrinsic motivators, so what external factors are motivating you. So these are looking at intrinsic motivations. These are looking at what motivates you as an individual coming from yourself. So the biggest one here, and this is, I think it's fantastic, I think it's testament to the commitment that these residents are feeling to climate change or to waste and recycling, but it's their moral or ethical responsibility. So that's really powerful. We know that if people are feeling like they have to do it, that's feeding very much into that social normative mechanism, which is a powerful behavior change technique. So social norm is all around, it's that sort of described as keeping up with the Joneses effect, where you're looking at what other people are doing and you feel like you have to do the behavior because you perceive that everybody else is doing it and you don't want to be left out, and that's kind of an intrinsic human human nature. Now, if we apply that to really powerfully to waste and recycling, I'm sure that's a big motivator of a lot of people. And the fact that this moral and ethical responsibility was polling so high would signal to us that that is definitely the case. Protecting nature was high there. Security for the future, my family's health, which was much higher than other cohorts which we were sampling across the rest of our audiences. But these are all powerful motivators that people believe are influencing them to want to take action around waste, but also around other sustainability actions. Now, we also asked this question around what's the most effective tool in motivating people to take action. And sometimes when we ask this question, we've asked this question several times over the years, it's kind of asking, what's the phrase, turkeys to vote to Christmas, perhaps. Sometimes people don't have the awareness of what tools are most effective to make them influence their behaviour. So sometimes this question is quite a lot of nuance to it. But regardless, it's still interesting to see what behaviours, what motivations that people perceive would have an impact on them, what motivating tools are there which would make them take action. And the top one here are financial incentives. And I think that speaks, and when we talk about financial incentives, it's up to the resident to interpret what that means. But it's not necessarily, we give away, as part of the Bexley scheme, for example, e-vouchers and vouchers for the top performing people who do the best and earn the most amount of points every month. But it doesn't necessarily equate to financial incentives like vouchers and things like that. It could be anything. It could be any sort of fiscal address to what they want to do. So I think the fact that was polling so high, I think speaks to this sort of cost of living crisis, perhaps, or this concern that people have around the cost of day-to-day items, and that people have selected financial incentives because that is of importance to them, and that is still a very pressing concern. Now, we know as waste professionals from our communications perspective how powerful the food waste figure for how much food waste is being wasted by the average family every year, £1,000, and that can be a very powerful headline tool for encouraging people to take action around tackling their food waste. So I think that's what this speaks to. That's what this figure speaks to. That's what financial incentives, I think, means to people. Education and training resources, very high. Again, we've spoken about e-learning, we've spoken about not that sort of knowledge and wanting to educate people, e-learning being part of that. Competitions and challenges, it was interesting that was polling fairly well, and social media campaigns. We know from the work that we do the power of that social media campaigns, Facebook advertising now, and we've got a few case studies and a few examples which we're happy to share people where Facebook advertising is generating a better return on investment in terms of engaging people around waste recycling, about getting people signed up to schemes like local green points in Bexley. Much better return on investment than doing the more traditional route of visiting people door to door, which is something we've done lots of over the years. So there's some really fascinating data around how where people are getting their information from has changed, and that how councils can tap into that to drive cost-effective interventions which generate change amongst residents. Then we asked the question around how can the council, how can their organisation support them to take sustainable actions to support residents? And this is actually a question which was open-ended. So we were asking for written responses from residents. very interesting. The top one there is clearer waste and recycling guidance, more education and training, better facilities and infrastructure. We know with things like the simpler recycling legislation and changes that councils are having to put into place around food waste collections, that hopefully is addressing that slice of that pie, right? We also see leadership and organisational commitment and incentives and rewards playing a part there as well. Right, so if we think about all this data, what does it mean for us? How can it help you engage with your residents? And I think that top one there, addressing those financial barriers, is really essential one. So anything you can do to link your messaging and your communications back to the financial aspect, right? So back to the cost of not doing it, or that food waste challenge being a really fantastic figure that we all use. We know from that moral and ethical responsibility data, we know from a couple of other data points within this that communications around social norms and moral responsibility, it's going to resonate with residents. That is always going to generate a lovely little bit of traction. It's going to generate some interest. So that's something we absolutely should be including in our newsletters, making people feel that they're part of a community, or making people part of a movement who are changing and doing things around waste and recycling. And then they're not just doing it on their own in a silo in isolation. They're part of something. And then finally, residents are looking for guidance and education. So, and I know the efforts that we all put into educating residents, and how it is a non-stop part and parcel of probably, no doubt, of your role, but that's something that's always going to need to happen. Again, hopefully legislation changes making that even more easy. I'll let Andrew perhaps talk about that in a minute. And then finally, from me, you might be pleased to hear, just thinking about why that sustained engagement matters, right? So once they are taken by the message that you are putting out, once they're perhaps a member, for example, of one of our schemes, and we want to encourage them to keep on doing the behaviour. It's not just a flash in the pan, one-off, and we hope they change their behaviour for a few weeks and then they slip back into their old ways. We want to keep that behaviour change sustained. So when we're polling, in the same poll, looked at a few questions for our members around how their behaviours and how their motivations have changed over time. We've got some great data coming out of there. So 84% of members are more aware of their consumptions and have taken steps to change. So that's an earlier intervention in the waste hierarchy. 95% of members understanding more about the impact of their actions on the environment, and 95% of members said that sustainability routines, including waste and recycling, have become part of their routine. So really interesting, some really interesting data, and hopefully that was a useful thing to share with everybody. Hopefully you found that insightful in terms of kind of a snapshot of residents, a poll on some residents that we've taken recently. Now, delighted to hand over to Andrew to talk a bit more specifically about actions taken by Bexley Council. And Andrew, over to you.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you very much, firstly, for inviting me to speak. My name is Andrea Cornwell, and I work for the London Borough of Bexley, and I am a waste minimisation engagement officer. I noticed that a lot of you are climate change officers, which is really great to see. So just to give you a bit of background then about Bexley. Oh, that's not. Oh, I see. Hold on a second. Oh, okay, fine. So obviously we are a unitary authority, and so we are responsible for collection and disposal, and so that gives us quite an incentive to keep all of our costs down, and to make sure that we get the least amount of costs that we can. So we are also motivated by the new legislation. So with simpler recycling coming in, we have two simpler recycling officers that I'll speak about in a little bit. And obviously businesses now have to recycle the main materials, and then this will be leading on to households. So we, although Bexley have always been quite ahead of the game, so we've been recycling food waste for all of our households for many years. We've still got a lot to do with flats, so that's our big push at the moment. And then obviously that will move to plastic film recycling, and the impact of the deposit return scheme will be interesting for us, all of us, to deal with. So we have about just under 80,000 properties with a fortnightly general waste collection, and then we alternate between the white lidded bin and the blue lidded bin. So white lidded bin is for plastic cans, glass and cartons, and the blue lidded bin is for our paper and cardboard. We moved to bins from boxes quite a few years ago because we wanted obviously to increase the capacity. But some places still do have the recycling boxes, and every resident has a 50-litre food waste caddy, and obviously a general waste bin, and our garden waste is a chargeable service. So we have quite a lot of flats in the borough, and flats above shops as well, and there are Achilles heel. They're the ones that we are really trying to get into at the moment, but it's quite tricky. In terms of just general education and awareness, obviously we want to raise awareness about, what needs to be recycled, the importance of recycling. We want to increase participation so that those people, make more people recycle, and reduce contamination. So contamination has been, quite a big issue. What with recycling, people wanting to recycle things that maybe they shouldn't be, or just general contamination. And also by educated people, more engagement, we end up with less queries coming through to contact centre, so that takes off the pressure for them. And then obviously once people know what they're doing, then they're motivated and able to carry on. So this is just a picture of us from quite a while ago, in fairness, doing some door knocking, going to people. We have four recycling officers, so they go out and they have certain areas in the borough that they cover, and if there's any issues, they will go out and speak to the residents on a daily basis. So in terms of engagement opportunities, then we have, I think that as a borough we're very proactive. We have myself that can go and do these as part of my job. That is the main bit of my job. So I think in terms of engagement, one of the easiest ways to engage with people is to have a simple stall. And the best way to do that, really, to save on time and effort, is to piggyback on top of people's events. So that could be from, really big events like we have the Dance and Festival, to smaller events like Family Fun Days, where we're basically there as an education tool, a touch spot for people to come along to. We have things to give away, so we'll have like food waste caddies to give away. We've just purchasing some more things like the trolley coins, because at the end of the day, we always make sure that it's something that is of value and isn't disposable, but we just want to bring people in, and then we can talk to them and ask them how the recycling is going. Is there anything that they want to know about? Because indefinitely there's always a question about plastics, because it's quite a complicated system, really, isn't it? So we do have, we sometimes will put, particularly if we're starting something new or something different, on our JC Deco boards. So they're the big boards that you see as you drive past them. We normally get the back side of that, but that's not, we don't have to pay for that particularly. We just have to pay for the actual posters to go on there. So that's a really good way of getting our messages out there as and when we need to. We also have, so on the pictures here, so you've got the Family Fun Day. We have been updating our website, which has been really key. I think there was a time when we were very limited by what we could put on our website. It's got a little bit better for us now, and we can actually sort of put things on there that we want people to know about, not just what they might come onto the site for, so they may find other things. So it's much more clear and concise. And we have a new food waste page that came on a year or so ago. We've got a business page now, so that's set up from recycling, and we've got a new reuse and repair page. So that's really useful because when I need to talk about things that are happening in the borough with events, I now finally have a place where I can send people to, and that is then linked to an Eventbrite page. So I do use Eventbrite to advertise things. Sorry, not to advertise, but allow people to find out more information or to book onto things. We also have a newsletter that is sent out about once a month, and that is a really useful way of getting people to find out about things that are coming up. So there's always something interesting to put on there for people. We've got about 3,500 to 4,000 people on that newsletter, and it's a great way of like, so for example, we've started a reuse shop recently, a repair cafe, things like that. And then I try to do it as a sort of like a top tip of the month, so a food tip. And then I can also put in other things that are relevant to other teams if needed. We have a focus group. So the focus group have been going in Bexley for, I don't know, I think it's probably at least 20 years. I mean, obviously they're not all the same people, but quite a lot of them are people that have been on there for a long time, and they're generally people who are interested in recycling. Probably started a lot of them because they had massive issues with their collections and things like that, and then wanted to come along and tell us all about that, but have become part of, we might test ideas out with them, find out what they think about what's happening, and then they can also give some feedback about, things that they find. So we were talking about the blister packs, for example, and how, it's easy to do that now. You can go through boots and, concept of that sort of thing. We've also got on our website the A to Z of recycling, which is really important. So those people who are really proactive, they want to know where lots of different things go. So the A to Z of recycling is basically everything that we could think of and where it might go, and if it can't be recycled, how to reuse it or reduce it. And then obviously we've got green points, but I'll touch on that again in a minute. So next slide. We have, of course, use of the vehicles. So every so often, periodically, we update what's on the side of our vehicles. And these are just examples of some of the ones that we've done recently. So based on different campaigns, so Right Rubbish, Right Bin, promoting the garden waste collections. And then more recently, it would have been the, don't put batteries in your weight anywhere in your recycling or in your general waste, and then touching back on your everyone else is doing it, you should be too. Your neighbours are recycling your food waste, are you? So that's quite a good one. I mean, on the side of vehicles, I think it's very important that it's a very simple, we're normally restricted to just 5 or 6 words, because you're driving past or it's stopping momentarily, so you don't get a lot of time to take in that information. Okay, so more engagement then. As I mentioned, we've got 2 simpler recycling officers, and they have been really on a mission to get our flats with food waste recycling. So they basically go to each of the flats and they have a quick knock on the door. If someone answers, they'll explain what the scheme is. But if not, they leave us a food waste caddy and a leaflet. And then obviously before that, we make sure that the food waste recycling is set up in the food, in the bin stores. So that's been really successful. And we have reached out to over 5,000 residents since May 2025. So they've been on a massive mission, and it has made a big impact with an engagement rate of about 23%, which I think is quite good. We also have the eco library tours. So I run these. So basically, it's quite nice to have something that is repeated so that people always know when you're going to be there and they can have access to that. That was the concept of it. It has changed. Things change as you go on. But eco library tours are meant to be a stop touch point where once a month we go to a few different we alternate between 3 different libraries, and then people could come along, and normally I might run an activity, so something really simple, and then that's an opportunity for people to ask about their recycling or any other issues they might have along those lines. But we also, one of the partners, so the Wasteless Market, we work with them. They're a local charity, and they do refills, but they also collect non-curbside recycling materials, such as the blister packs, cheese wrappers, food, bread wrappers, that sort of thing, and send it to TerraCycle. So that's a really nice. So they already have like some people coming in that regularly collect those items, and then we can all keep in touch with each other. We have what was I going to say? We have normally I run an Easter event and a Christmas event. So that's a good way of making sure it's a nice thing to do, because there's 2 ways of approaching events. I think small events are great because you can really communicate with those people and build up a relationship, but are in return quite a lot of effort for the amount of people that are there, that are able to be there. Whereas larger events, it's a similar amount of effort, but you get more people through the door, more opportunity to spread information, but you don't get that as personal attention. So I think they work, both in different ways. But I have been leaning towards, being more larger events seem to have a slightly better payback on the occasion. And then we also work with the schools waste. So I'm just seeing what comes up. So we do a teachers climate change training, which has just started actually, which is reaching out to teachers. I don't think it's mandatory yet, but they have to actually send that in, but they have to have a climate change policy for every school. So, and a lot of the teachers just don't have the time, capacity or knowledge to do that. So it's a place where they can come along, learn how to write one, and actually walk away with one at the end of the session. Which brings me to SWAC, which is the Schools Waste Action Club. So we've had a Schools Waste Action Club in Bexley for over 20 years, and Schools Waste Action Club officer their role is purely mainly to go into schools and teach children about 3 R's, and then focus on the materials. So we have there's over 20 lessons or so that we teach, and we're very flexible from what the school requires. And the thing with the Schools Waste Action Club, you have to keep going back. You can't just do it as a one-stop, as was mentioned earlier on. It's a continuous sort of touch point of reminding children. So they might have heard it once when they're in year 2 or something, and then they hear it again in year 4, and then obviously then they move on. So then you have to keep going back to keep reminding. And as children get older, their priorities change, or their knowledge changes, and they've forgotten stuff that they learned before. And the other big thing about the schools waste education is that, it's pest power. So we do sort of say to them, make sure you go home, tell your parents or families about, what you've learned today, check that everybody's recycling, make sure they're all recycling, and putting the right thing into the right bin. And it also initially gave us the opportunity to make sure that every school in the borough has the right recycling facilities. And so from March 24 to March 25, for example, the Waste Education Officer spoke to over 7,500 children in Bexley, and with food waste assemblies, because obviously food was a big impact, big focus. They spoke to over about 3,000 students. So, and that's through assemblies and activities. So they really are, very important part of what we think is our success rate. We also invested in recycling videos. So we have 3 or 4 recycling videos now. The first one was on the white lidded bin, because we wanted to explain to people what to put in there, how it works, what happens to their stuff, because at the end of the day, some people, think, well, I think one of the barriers is people just think it all just gets thrown away or burnt or sent abroad and, in a pile somewhere. So, you know, it's really good to show that, you know, something genuinely does happen to it. And we're very lucky because we've got one of the largest MRFs in the country, in Europe, I think it is, just on our doorstep. So we utilise that. And we did the same for the blue lidded bin. And obviously we can then use those videos on our website. We can use them at events, and then we use snippets of them for social media. So, and we think that they're a really good way of telling people some information, sharing information to people, educating them. Coming back to the workshops then. So obviously in our general waste bin, there's two main materials that are in there that we need to get out. Food being the main one, and textiles being another key one for the environmental impact, but also on the cost that it takes for disposal. Most of my workshops are focused on food and textiles, and they are really good opportunities. So they're not, I teach them. So, and I'm not a chef, but I've got all my training that I require for it. But it means that people come along, they're very simple recipes and ideas. I think it's quite nice that they learn from someone who isn't, like, you know, too chefy. And a lot of them, people just want like basic skills. So you might even go through how to chop an onion, for example, and then people walk away going, oh, okay. And, you know, and then other people will learn obviously more things than that. But I always do a talk at the beginning to explain the impact of food waste, and then talk about how, you know, based on Love Food Hate Waste, about the 4 main ways that they can reduce food waste. And there's always something to learn from each other. So people share what they do. And then I had one lady who said, oh yeah, I now know about my broccoli stalks. I never ever throw them away anymore. I always eat them. So it's just little things like that. But it means that people go away with those simple skills, but also touching on what was said before, you know, that priority in your life. They go, and because I always say, you're probably not going to learn anything massively new, but what you will do is it will bring it back to more of a priority in your life, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I remember I could do this and this and this for my food. Or and obviously I talk about recycling food waste as well. So I do about 40 to 60 activities a year, and so touching between, you know, 500 people to thousands, because it depends on the size of the event that we run. And the textiles ones are obviously based on upcycling textiles, fixing and mending your clothing to try and keep it in the system for longer. I think the thing with this is, you know, how do you get people to turn up to these workshops, and do you charge for them or don't you charge for them? We have never charged for ours, but that does mean you get a quite high dropout rate of up to 50%. So obviously I know that, and I cater for that. I think it's, although we're a London borough, we are on the outskirts, so I think it is different if you were more central or had a really sort of a different population dynamics. But I think, you know, sometimes by charging a minimum amount, I'm talking, you know, a few pounds, it kind of adds value to that particular activity. So it's a tricky one, but then, you know, setting up those things and handling money isn't really ideal. So we decide we don't charge for any. And also we don't want anybody to miss out because they can't afford it. So that is, moving on then. We also are very fortunate that we have had a lot of input from the incineration facility, Corey. So they have worked with us. We've worked together for many years now, and we run various events and other things in the borough together. So they have, so the first picture of the children, that's of the Earth Summit. So every couple of years we run something that's all based on textiles and fashion and how to design an event. So we have students who upcycle like clothing, we have ones that create food for the event, ones that talk about, so like the media side of it, and then it all comes together in this great fashion show. If anyone's interested, I can send you, we have a nice video that shows it. We also recently ran some furniture upcycling courses where we managed to get it as an accredited course, a brand new one, a level 2 through CIWM, a WAMI tab, and that's the lady in the middle, Emily. She's painting her items. And these are really good because these particular activities, so we've only run 3 or 4, but from those there's been you know, they've set up their own group and they really like want to make an restore or upcycle furniture. And then from that, there's been a splinter group that really want to do wooden furniture, and now we're trying to set them up a space where they can do that, because you know they want to do more than what they can just store at home. So then they'll hopefully give that, they'll be donating some of that to the reuse shop that then can be sold on. So it kind of creates this really nice circular thing. But this is the point, you never really know what you're going to get out of things, but by engaging face to face with people, it is really a useful way of really building strong sort of relationships with people. And then the top picture is of the Repair Cafe network meeting, which was really positive. And from that, we've been able to start our first Repair Cafe. So we're really pleased about that. The bottom picture on the right is the Bexley Eco Festival. So this is a big event that Corey Fund have so far funded every other year for the last couple of years, and we get about 2,500 people come through the door for that. We're in the middle of planning our one for September, on the 5th of September, so if anybody's around, please do drop by. It's at Lesness Abbey. And then there's the Green Schools Green Award, which is celebrating the projects that the schools do through an award where they can win money for projects, and then we bring them all together, the finalists. It's kind of not trying to promote good projects for other schools as well, so they can build on that. Our partners, obviously we have built up lots of partners, but just to touch on Green Points in particular at the moment. So as mentioned, we've been working with Green Points for, you know, since 2011, and it is a really, really useful platform for us to get information to the residents that isn't council orientated. So it's got, you know, it doesn't have that corporate side to it. It's much more soft touch. It's much more engaging. Obviously, and the incentive side of it is something that we could not do exactly as a council, but we can do through the Green Points platform. It obviously encourages those that may not, the incentives are there for people who may not always just, you know, want to do it proactively, but with that incentive, that's enough for them to then say, okay, I'm prepared to do something about this. It's always relevant. It's being updated all the time. I think it's nice because it's activity, so you know it sort of caters for different types of people. So the incentives, an activity, if you like a quiz or you want to sort of, you know, engage in that way, there's the opportunity to do that. It provides learning and reinforcement through that sort of system as well, through the quizzes. I think it's the other incentive, of course, is that it gives discounts for local businesses, for some local businesses. And I know we did quite a big push recently to get more businesses on board, which is really great. And I think, you know, it was mentioned that there'll be councils from rural areas. You know, if you are in a rural area and setting up like events is not particularly easy because of, you know, the spread, then actually this is a really nice opportunity to be able to communicate and build a community within the Green Points platform. I mean, we do have over sort of, like I mentioned, about 20 different partners or so. Trade are a big one. They're our textiles recycling contractor, and they're great. The Wasteless Market are a great, very local network where people like-minded, you know, reach out to more like-minded, and basically Liz is the guru of recycling, even if I do say so myself. You know, if it gets past her, then you know you're okay and what you're trying to say to people. But she has links to the community. She comes along to all of our events, and you know, and it's a really useful opportunity to work with such a local charity. And then Children's University, I don't know if anybody's heard of Children's University, but they also deal with children in schools, and sometimes we go along. I'm a learning destination, so they get like they have to get a certain number of points for activities that are not within the typical school environment, and then they have like a little graduation ceremony and things like that. So that's nice to be involved with that. And then and just to touch on the fact that we have the Repair Cafe and the Reuse Shop, which opened. Reuse Shop opened just before Christmas, and the Repair Cafe starts next month. The one in Thamesmead, and the Sidcup one started this month. They've been things that we've been on our bucket list for at least 15 years, so we're really excited that they are finally off the ground. The Reuse Shop's going really well, and it's a really great opportunity, and actually I want to utilize it more to engage with people with information. So there's a nice information board there so people can find out about things that are going on. And the Repair Cafe is fixing and mending items as well. So in summary, face-to-face versus, I've already mentioned, sort of online, they both have their place. I think obviously you want them both to work together, but if you're time constrained, then I'd say online is going to be a winner. To charge or not to charge, I already touched on the fact that there are benefits to a minimal charge. There was one where you sign up £5 and you get £3 back when you turn up. I don't think that's unreasonable, paying for a small amount of resources, or just to give it that onus that it's an important thing. I do think sometimes bigger is better, piggybacking onto other people's events, or bringing lots of different people together. It's more footfall. People come along for one thing and then they find out about something else whilst they're there. Obviously, be realistic. You've only got so much time. That's one of my downfalls. I try to do too many things, but it's hard not to, isn't it? You do need a landing page, I think, or somewhere where people can find out information, which I now have, but it took a while to come. And then I do use Eventbrite because my things are free. I can put them on there on Eventbrite and I don't get charged. And then venues are a really important thing, where you're going to have these things. It's got to be accessible. It's got to, and the cost of it as well. So I think that pretty much brings me to the end. So thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew. And what an impressive array of activity that you and your team there are looking after in Bexley. It makes me want to be a resident and take part in some of those really fun stuff. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. If you have any questions for Andrew, please do feel free to put them in the chat. We do have a Q&A now. We've got five or so minutes. If you've got any questions, then we'd love to hear them. There's been a couple trickle in, Andrew, for you specifically. So Anya's asked whether they'd be interested in reading through a copy of your recent monthly newsletter. Is there a link for the general public that the general public could access?
Ooh. No, probably not, because everybody, you'd have to be a member to get it, but I can certainly send a copy across. That's absolutely no problem.
Yeah. Okay, I'm obviously happy to facilitate that.
And
then another question here from Katie saying, what was the name of the accreditation for the upcycling furniture course again, please? Is it RITAB?
Now, I do have to triple check it, because I think it is just the furniture upcycling course. It's a level 2 furniture upcycling course. I can send that across as well. It is really good, but I would warn that it is intensive. So although I am qualified to teach it, it's a lot for people to do, because we decided to go down the route of coursework, I guess, rather than a test, because we didn't want to put people off of having to sit a test. But in order to do that, you have to do a lot of observations, and they have to fill in, a significant number of information as well, forms, updates on their things. So although it is a level 2 qualification, and we will run another one because it is useful, I think on the whole we'll probably stick to a more simpler version where they don't actually have to get that qualification at the end. But it is a great qualification to have and to offer to residents, because especially if you're looking to get people into the job world.
And then I think there's some questions here which are around, impressed by the amount of work that's coming out from you and your team here. So how many staff are on the waste minimisation or on your team? And
well, there's 2 simpler recycling officers, 3 recycling officers, I think. And myself, the waste minimisation engagement officer, and a schools waste education officer. And then obviously there's other sort of senior members but on the ground, that's what we are. Yeah. So we do quite a lot between us. We're quite a proactive, dedicated group of people.
Yeah. And then I had a couple of questions as well, if that's okay. So one is around something we've worked on, Bexley and Team Jump for many years, is hard to reach properties, right? It's those properties which flats above shops, mansion blocks, flats themselves, where behaviours are, people don't have the opportunity and the capability to do the behaviours which we're trying to influence, right? The waste and recycling behaviours. What's the Bexley approach to those? Does it change how you deliver your communications and messaging, or does it influence your approach to those properties?
Yeah, they are definitely much harder to reach properties. In terms of, I know at the moment with the food waste recycling, the flats have been a lot easier than the flats above shops. Flats above shops, they're hard to find how to even access them. So because we are door knocking with those, their bins are often contaminated by the shop that might be below. So it is a case of a bit of face to face and making sure that they've got that engagement where possible, and having that information on the website, and having platforms like such Screenpoint that people can access the information in different ways. There are other ways. I know that some of the inner London cities, they have things on the lampposts, explaining things. They have things on the bin, like on the litter bins to explain, where to put the food waste and that sort of thing, or even on the pavements. But yeah, it's not a simple thing to crack, and I think it's always changing, because a lot of those people may not be in their property for that long, so they're new, so then they need that information again. So we used to send out information via the council tax something, one of the those letters, but don't think we are able to do that anymore. So that's a really good way if you're able to, because obviously anybody who's moving into the borough is going to be paying that, and therefore they get that key information there and then, because we all do our recycling slightly differently, don't we? So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that does. No, that's really useful, thank you. And then we've got a question here in the chat from James about the role of education and training in behaviour change, and that research indicating that education does little to actually change long-term behaviours in target groups. And obviously those people, it's that effect of preaching to the choir, right? The people who are more likely to engage with the initiatives, the ones who are more likely to have been doing the behaviours in the first place. I'm happy to address that from a Team Jump perspective, and also welcome your comments as well, Andrea. But I think from us, I think that to me is one of the superpowers of a gamification and approach which we take at Team Jump, right? It's all about, I always see it as, it's a bit of a bell chart of all the people you can engage with. You've got your committed green champions at one end as a small minority of people. They're the ones who are doing 100% of the behaviors all day, every day. They're the ones who are leading by example. You've then got the middle ground, right? The majority of people, they're the ones who behaviours you can influence. We know from evidence around how many people are recycling, how many people are doing sustainable behaviours like travelling to and from, commuting sustainably, how many people are saving energy in the workplace or at home. We know that there's a huge lot that can still happen and still be done, and it's the majority of people who can influence those behaviours. And then on the other end of the chart, you've got the people who are very reluctant. They're skeptical perhaps about climate change. They're not easily swayed by any sort of initiative, and certainly initiatives like we're trying to promote are not going to be able to move the dial for those people. So very much I see the approach of a team jump or any sort of gamification engagement scheme is around engaging that middle ground. You've the people, the green champions already converted. You're unlikely to change the opinions of the hardcore skeptics, and it's the middle ground which you're trying to influence. And the beauty of an engagement program is it opens up different routes, channels, and avenues for council officers to use in order to engage those people. So it might be points, it might be giving out points for doing sustainable behaviours, leaderboards for individuals and for communities, vouchers for those people who are doing the top performing thing. And the vouchers, it's really important that the vouchers are proportionate to the residents you're trying to engage. There's no point having lots of vouchers for shops and for facilities which are miles away from them, or from shops and facilities which they don't aspire to. But we always find that having a good range of vouchers which appeals to the majority of people, again, is a good way of bringing everybody on that journey and not just specific individuals. So we'd steer away from kind of really eco-specific vouchers and be more like supermarket vouchers are always by far the most popular ones, for example. So yeah, I think hopefully, James, that helps answer some of those questions around reaching beyond those people who are already doing the behaviours and already converting. It's about appealing to that wider majority. Andrew, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Not a lot, really. I mean, I agree. There's, you've got a big middle ground, haven't you, of people who, if you can find a way to access them through what you were saying, but also that's why we go to different types of events, why it's not just our events, it's piggybacking onto all different sorts of things, because somebody might just walk past and happen to talk. I mean, we're not going to go and grab people and get them to talk to us, but we do get people talking to us who don't want to do it, who aren't interested, or who are kind of not doing it at the moment, recycling, I mean, and and by the end of a conversation they generally are. I mean, I have to say, so, and obviously people who turn up to the workshop, so I don't always say this is all about recycling. I think that's quite key. Sometimes that's quite key to sort of say this is just a really fun family activity, and then they turn up and I might say it's like a craft activity, and when they turn up then I've got them there, they're my audience, then I can then talk to. And having a captured audience, utilizing other people's audiences is also really good. So you might go along to, I don't know, a knit and natter group or that sort of thing, where they're not going there for you, but you happen to be there. And also, and I have to say, I think all the years I've done this, I can only remember one time when I was explaining about, maybe it was recycling textiles or something, and I just, or it probably was food waste, and they just categorically said, no, I'll never do it, I'll never ever do it. But I have, by the time if you are able to explain to people why and how, it's only been one time that I've ever come across somebody who's definitely said no. But I agree that it isn't always easy to get to those people, but that's why you have to try different routes in, and that's why keeping it broad is quite useful as well. And the things like the repair cafes, and they're different ways, people have got different interests, so they're probably just coming along because they want something fixed for free, but whilst they're there, then we'll find out about other information. So for example,
yeah, it's really valuable. Okay, so that's us at time today. So really thanks to everybody who's joined us and everyone who's asked questions in the chat as well. Particularly, thank you very much, and thank you, Andrea, for your time. And
pleasure,
it's been
thank you.
Great working with Bexley Council for such a long period of time, and hopefully it continues for many years as well. If you haven't heard about Team Jump before, you're interested in the conversation with us, please do reach out. I think we'll be sending out the recording of this session today, so by all means, if you'd like to have a conversation with us, think about what we can do for you in your local authority. Always here, always happy to help. Thanks very much. Speak soon.
Thanks.